Yeah, we can't hear it.
Yeah.
That's so weird. It kind of comes in and out.
That's so weird. But
It
you're
is.
listening to
Dumpster
Dumpster
diving with
Diving
Janice
and Jane. And we're
and
screwing up our music this morning, but that's
Jane's
okay.
gonna hum a little bit. What are we playing, Jane? Come on, hum it for us. Sing it for us.
Your own way.
There you go.
You know, a little bit of Fleetwood Mac, but apparently my audio is not the greatest, as we all know.
You know what? One day we're gonna have a big fancy editor producer, and they're gonna know how to put the music on top of it, and so it's gonna be all good.
Yes. Or we'll just learn it ourselves and do it because we can't afford a big fancy producer.
You know what? I think our listeners like that this is like rough.
Oh yeah, they like it raw.
Yeah. So I don't want to disappoint them by making it fancy.
No.
And, so we we got to walk the line. We'll walk the line.
I mean, I kind of like that the only thing they do complain about is our audio. So let's keep it going there. I don't want them
to you're right.
Else.
I think if we keep them distracted by the audio, they won't pay attention to the content and we'll seem like geniuses, right?
Thank you.
Okay. Walk into our web. I mean, hi, everybody. We're so glad you're here again. This is so great. Yes. Yeah. Are we ready to launch? This is going to be such a great conversation.
It is, because it's very topical and it's so right now for so many Americans and, you know, around the world, probably. I don't know what other
schedules are like,
but hey,
because it is graduation season, everyone. And you're either far removed from it because you don't have a kid anywhere in that sphere, whether your kids are already way past it or your kids are way too little for it, or you're right in the middle of it. Right? And if your kids are past it, you're going to love this episode because you're going to be like, yeah, I remember. Oh, I'm so glad that's over. And if your kids are too young, listen up. It's never too early to start thinking about this stuff. And if you're right in it, you might stop listening right this second because you just can't think about it one more second. But I'm telling you, if you hang in, it's going to be helpful for you if you're in it right now. Like my sister Jane is in it right now. So here's what we know. We're like, you know what we're surrounded by right now? People people's kids are graduating. It's all, everything on social media is my kids graduating. And we're really talking about high school. College, yes, too, a little bit, but right now we're just going to be focusing on high school, mostly because for most folks, the first time they deal with a real graduation, I'm not talking about that preschool graduation crap. That's all bogus. No, the middle graduation, also a little bit on the ridiculous side, but whatever. We're talking about high school graduation, right? So we are talking about how we are parenting in the midst of this graduation season. And yes, you're going to hear us refer a lot to moms because we're surrounded by moms who are like filling our heads with their, struggles and all the things right now. But we know you dads are out there too. So this is for you too. But yeah, Jane, I think we should jump right into it and say, congrats, you have a high school grad.
I do, for the third time. I mean, not to, bring personal lives of my two older children in, but Tyler, my son, he did graduate from high school. Emily, my oldest, took a different route, and she's now in college in her late 20s. But that's okay because we all have our own paths, and I'm definitely not one of those moms that's like, no, you must do this, because I didn't do that. So, and we can get into that, but I'm very much about autonomy and letting my kids, do what they want, and supporting them, not even letting them, that because that doesn't even make sense, but supporting them in those choices. And but this is crazy right now. Like I've because my son was across the United States when he went through his graduation, and I was more of a visitor. I got to come and celebrate and everything. I didn't have to plan and deal with a lot of the stuff that goes along with it. And let me tell you guys, this is the first time that it was like kind of a wake-up call of like all of the stuff. And mind you, this is another 10 years after my other ones have already kind of graduated and stuff like that. And I'm like, the pressure of all of the shit you have to do to make sure that you're a good parent and show your kid that you love them, and all that, like yard signs to trips to invitations, to announcements, to what is my cap gonna look like, to like, oh my Lanta, like this, there's so much stuff. And y'all, like, I'm back to being a single mom. I think everybody's picked up on that at this point, and I don't have that other support system. And now I'm like, okay, all right, like really, this is important. Okay, like, and trying to navigate what is going to show my daughter that she's special to me and that I love her
Yes.
and all of those things, but at the same time, not, I don't have money for this crap.
Right.
Like it's
Yeah.
a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and it's a lot of this, and this, and holy mackerel. And some of my colleagues and employees are going through the same thing. And I'm like, how are you doing all of this?
Yeah.
Like red carpet events. And I'm like, whoa, what? But a lot
Meanwhile,
of
you're
it's
like, this is
virtual.
high school. Like, I mean,
Right.
it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Don't
It's a
get me wrong.
huge
Of course
deal.
it is.
It's a huge
But
deal.
when we step back from it, right, we
Yeah.
know that it's in the big scheme of their lives and what they're going to accomplish, right? It's a big deal, but should we spend, thousands and thousands of dollars? That's a whole other question. So we're going to break this conversation
Yeah, let's
into
break it
a
down.
couple of parts, right? We're going to break it
Yeah.
down into the social pressure that we feel as parents, watching everybody do all the things. So we're going to start there, right?
Yep.
And I can talk a little bit about it. We've had 4 kids graduate high school now, and we have no, that's not true. 5 kids graduate high school, 1 left. We have 6 total. That's right. I got it. 6 total. And so 1 left, but she's still 2 years out. But you're in it, like I said, right now. So we're going to talk about the social pressures. We're going to talk about, kind of tied to that, the whole financial piece and like some of the big financial decisions we're making as they go into their next step, and really kind of reminding ourselves about this idea of return on investment. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then we're going to talk about how we fill the space. Like if our kid is leaving and doing whatever they're going to do away from us, how do we fill the space that they leave behind? And lastly, we're going to talk about really kind of how we respond when our kids are not taking a traditional path, right? Again, it ties to that social pressure piece. So it's not that we're going to be necessarily in each bucket at one time as much as blending those ideas probably across this conversation, but those are the big ideas we want to target. So tell us, talk a little bit, Jane, about just like, first, let's hear a little bit, not again, like we're both kind of keeping our kids a little bit anonymous in this whole thing, but a little bit about your current graduate, like what she's excited about, and then let's hear from you to start that kind of like social pressure piece. Like, where are you trying to kind of define how best to, you said it right before we came on, how I make her feel special within the means that we have to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, comparatively speaking, I mean, she has, my daughter is, let me just start off with an amazingly creative, beautiful, fun, spunky, like she is like everything rolled into one and sassy as fuck. Like I just, like
where does she get that from though?
I don't know. It must be from her father.
It's a mystery.
It is a mystery. No, so she's so much fun. But she's also highly emotional. She's just that Scorpio, highly emotional being. And so, most conversations go with tears, just because they do, and but she's always been that way and she braces it. Like she's like, whatever, I'm a crier. I'm like, okay, good. But driving, we live in a small town, so it's not like we live, like you live in San Diego, and so it's a little bit bigger of a city. Like we live in a little small town where, everybody goes to this particular high school and everybody knows it. And it's one of those small town things. And so the pressure's on. Like you drive through the neighborhoods where I drop her off at her friend's house every day, and there's the yard signs everywhere. And I'm like, okay, noted. I got to get a yard sign, like, and I even asked her though, I'm like, do you want a yard sign? And she was like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. I'm like, all right.
Good for you for asking though, because we don't always, right?
And that's the thing. And that's the thing is like, I see all of this stuff and y'all, like, if you're not asking your kid, my kids don't like being embarrassed. I don't know any other kid that does, but they, especially embarrassment is not cool to them. So don't embarrass me, mom, and so I have to ask, is this going to embarrass you? Is this important to you? Is this special to you? And all of those things. And somebody pointed out to me, so I have to admit, I'm one of those parents that's behind the 8 ball right now. I took her senior pictures myself with my iPhone, but we did it and they turned out great, and I still sent out the announcements, but I'm doing that this afternoon or today, but via email because I can't mail them out anymore. And it's the pressure of get it all done before we need to get it, before it comes here. But my secret has been talking to her about it, and just really asking her, like, what is important to you? What do you want to do? what would make your day, and everything else, because she understands. And because I talk to my kids about pretty much, everything is like, we don't have the money for this,
Yeah.
and I really wanted to plan a little trip to drive up north just to have a couple of days. And we just can't do that.
Yeah.
So instead it's going to be going to Aunt Janice's house for free board and going
Whoop,
to San
whoop.
Diego for a long weekend and saving some money, but hitting the beaches and being not at
Exactly.
our normal beaches. So all of that to be said is like, communicate with your kids,
Yeah.
like that's the only way that I'm getting through this, is by communicating with her and understanding. And when I did the pictures, like she was, Mom, when are we going to do the pictures? I'm like, okay, let's go do them. And I took the pictures and they turned out great. But one of my friends was like, do you not see her face? She is so, you can tell that she's just not posing for that picture. She is like
Yeah.
posing for that picture because you did it, Mom. You went out
Yep.
there, you drove her to this pretty place and you took the time and you brought her cap and gown and you did all of that. Yeah, so what if it's last minute and so what? But you're taking the time to do that and you can
That's
see
right.
it in her face. And I was like, you know what? You're right. It was a very like, hurry up, let's go. But it's the pressure that we put on ourselves
Yeah.
as well. And that, I
Well,
think that's the most pressure that we get from anywhere.
oh my gosh, right? So we spend their lifetime telling them to not like be influenced by peer pressure, and
Right?
yet we know that that lasts a lifetime, right? Because here we
Yes.
are then as moms, seeing what the neighbors are doing, looking on social media, seeing all the things, and to
Yeah.
your point, feeling like the pressure. So I think your advice of like just talking with them is so important. And I
Mhm.
also think being really real with them, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that we have to normalize that we're not all always in a financial position to do all the things. And yet not having the money to do some of the really crazy things we see people doing doesn't mean you're less special, doesn't mean we don't love you. Let's talk and be real about it so that you then can say, all right, well, with this amount of money, here's
Right.
what I would like most to do, right? And I think
Right.
as parents, I know I've done this. And our kids are pretty much all grown except for our youngest, and so we're trying to correct it a little bit, but we never talked about money, and we won't go too far into this, it's a
Right.
tangent, but we never talked about money with our kids because we never wanted our kids to worry about money. But now when I look back, I realize like being having your kids to be a part of the conversation so that they see that it's okay, right, if you
Yes.
don't have all the things, and again giving them the voice. And I got to tell you, like we were able to, like with Montana and Sid, who are the most recent graduates, and even Jonah, but he, as a boy, not necessarily as interested in this. The girls are the ones who are like, I need the perfect pictures. I need the.
Right.
So we were able to like do the photographer thing again, like local mom off of Facebook Marketplace photographer,
Oh,
right?
okay, of course.
But even that, like I look back on those pictures now and they're beautiful, right? But they take like 200 pictures and we used two of them, right? So I
Right.
just feel like and for Cami, here's the thing, because she knows her older sisters had that. If that's what she wants, we're going to do that. But I'm going to be able to say to her, we could take those two pictures with our iPhones, and hell,
Yes.
I'll give you the $300, right? Like
Yeah.
you can put it in your
Laura can
savings
come
account,
down, or Aunt Jane can
right?
come down and
And
help
Jane's
take
coming
pictures.
down, and that's the trade-off, right? So anyway, so I just love that you're able to lift that up, and the idea of just ask them, right?
Yeah.
Here's what I can spend on this whole graduation thing. What's going to be most important to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's where we can save money.
Yeah,
We can do this on our own, I'm
exactly.
fully capable. And it truly is the communication and the transparency and not to open up the floodgates with the financial conversation with the kids, but
Mhm.
that's something that I've always done is
Yeah.
if I've had to tell them no, I've always explained to them why.
Yes.
Hey, I really want this toy. Well, let's work towards it through, let's
Yeah.
earn some oh God, what's the word? Allowance. And
Yeah.
then and then we can work towards it. And this is
Yep.
why Mom has a big bill coming up. So I can afford $5, but not $25. So let's
There
save
you
that
go.
$5.
Yep.
And then in a couple of weeks we can get it. And if they really wanted it still, then they would get it. And if they didn't,
Exactly.
oh
Moving on.
well, you forgot. Okay,
Yep.
cool. But that's how life is, because as adults we do the same thing. Oh, I really
Yeah.
want it. Oh, I want that so bad. And we go and get it and extend our credit and do all of
Yep.
those things instead of just waiting until we actually have the money for it and then going, oh, I don't even
Do I
want it.
still want it?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yeah. And
that's
like you said.
Yeah,
I'm making a note. We're going to do a whole other episode on just the practicality of that kind of stuff, the day-to-day finances
totally.
and how you include your kids. So this ties though to this idea of some of the things, right? Like we see people who do really simple, like cook out in the backyard, right, to celebrate the
Yeah.
graduation, all the way to the elaborate, like
Going
freaking
across the
rented a
world.
space. And or yes, or I'm taking my kid on a European trip. And don't get us wrong, let us be really clear.
That's so
Those are
cool.
the funds you have, and that's what you guys are wanting. The good
Beautiful.
on you. This is about when you're not in a position to do that,
Right.
how you don't let the other folks who are like make you feel lesser, right? As a
Right.
mother, as a father, as the kid.
Well, let's keep in mind too that, ever since social media started, and because this is where we're seeing the most of it,
Oh yeah.
we're seeing videos and pictures and
Yep.
and not that any of it's bad. We love all of it. I'm so happy that some people can do that for their family
Absolutely.
and make those choices. I'm not in that position, neither are you, and that's okay.
Yeah,
But people are only putting what they want on
that's
social
right.
media. And so it's all the behind scenes, it's the tantrums, it's the, I can't afford this. It's all of the things that they're
Yeah.
dealing with that they're not putting on social media. The
Yep.
fact that they're in debt so much more now, if that's the
Yeah.
case. Or the fact that their kid maybe is not a well-behaved kid and they're throwing tantrums behind the scenes and this
Yeah.
car, that's all I got, blah, blah, blah. Cause
Right.
I mean, just the other day I heard about a 16-year-old having a $50,000 Mercedes for her 16th birthday, and she's grounded from it because she can't keep her grades up. And it's like, oh my God,
Oh
I don't
my
even
God,
have
you
a
get me started.
$50,000 car and I work my
Yeah.
ass off,
Yep.
and that's fine. That's their family. But if you're having problems, what are you doing about those problems?
Yeah.
So,
That's right.
it's about how you're bringing it around and showing that value and having your kids understand that value and what it actually takes to make that happen. And
Well,
I will tell you, my girls know what it takes for me to make anything happen
I
because
love
we
that.
talk about it all the
That's
time.
it. And that's I feel like one of the most important things you can do for your kids, right? So I love that so much. And I think that, what we know about the wealth gap in this country right now is that it's bigger than it's ever been,
Yep.
which means there are really only a small percentage of people who can really afford to do all the things that we see people posting online and actually still be, debt free
Financially
or not
fine.
even debt free, but financially sound, right?
Yeah.
And so part of this is, I think, for us to just kind of start to normalize the idea that it's okay if we're living within our limits. And that means that we don't have the fancy this or do the fancy that for our kiddo. Or again, we're keeping it to the simple backyard barbecue, right? With some banners and some
Right.
balloons, and that's enough, right? That the pressure that we feel from what everybody else is doing, again, you said it perfectly, it doesn't mean that because those are the pictures we're putting on social media, that behind that isn't a great deal of struggle. So don't let the pictures we
Right.
post be the things that drive how you feel about yourself and what
Right.
you're able to do, et cetera, right? I just feel like there's so much to be said for that, and reminding ourselves that most people can't afford that without taking a pretty big financial hit. And so
Right.
make the choice that is best for your family and move on and don't feel compelled to keep
Totally.
up.
And just talk to your kids about it because,
Yeah.
half the time, sometimes those things are embarrassing and they don't want them anyway. And they're like,
Yeah.
Mom, really yard signs? Like, fuck me.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Our middle schooler, like Cammy was like, absolutely not. Like when because they
right?
do for all the grades now, like I said, and that's a whole different conversation too, how we're trying to like have all the experiences earlier and earlier and earlier, right? Versus letting them be special. But yeah, as a middle schooler, she was like, don't even think about it. Like yeah,
Right.
we're
We're not
not,
doing this.
there's no need for a sign. So let's kind of transition then from
Yeah.
here to the bigger financial picture too of, our kids are another part of this whole picture is our kids then we're also posting about what our kids are doing next, right? That's another thing
Right.
that's a constant source of conversation. And so, my kid got into these schools, they're selecting that school, they're going into the military, maybe they're going to a career in tech ongoing like licensure programming, so many really incredible viable options. But again, you're in that position where, well, what is my kid doing? Is my kid going to a college? Is the college, good enough, if you will it make a good impression on people, which again is for me is like such a ludicrous position that we put ourselves in, right?
Right.
The pressure from that, but also a lot of our kids don't do something specific in that first year out of high school, right? If our kids aren't ready to invest in college. And by that, I mean, like, actually have an idea of where they want to go. Because these days, when I went to college, college was cheap enough that you could spend college trying to figure out what you wanted to do.
Right.
College ain't cheap enough for that anymore, sadly, right? College is now like, okay, yeah, you need to have a little bit of an idea because we can't actually afford $20,000 a year for you to just figure out what you want to do.
Right.
So a lot of kids, more and more kids are opting not to go right into school, and yet it's not normalized yet in terms of us feeling good about, yeah, my kid's going to take a year off and they're going to work and figure out what they want to do, right? That's still not quite normalized.
Yeah, and it's not everybody's expectations, or most people's expectations are they're going straight to college and they're going to figure out their life. But if you really reel it back and peel back a couple of the first layers, is they kind of have to know what the hell they're doing before they go to college. And
Yes.
most kids don't know, and they're scared, and they're all of those things. So then they go into college still being scared, being led by other adults that you're not there. You're not
Right.
there to help guide them. So they're depending on counselors and their friends are going through the same thing. I the new season of the Fab Five or Queer Eye, is on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I freaking love those gay boys so much. I just love them. And the first episode was this college fraternity. And these boys, and they are, I mean, they're young men, but they're still emotionally boys.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And the one guy, oh, what's his name? I can't remember his name. But he brings them all in. He has like this little bonfire with them, and they're literally like bawling their eyes out because they don't know how to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Because and talk about their feelings. And the one kid like had a car and wrecked it the next day. So then he was back riding the bus like 2 days later after he just spent all this money and
Oh my
and all of
gosh.
this stuff. And I look at my daughter, and we talk a lot about this. She's scared to be an adult.
Yeah.
She's like, this, it sounds like it blows. I'm like, it
Yeah.
does most of the time. Really, it does. It's not all chalked up to what, it's not what it's all chalked up to be, and it does blow. You have so many things coming at you, and you have to make those decisions now.
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't want to grow up. I just want to, and I'm like, hey, as long as you can live underneath my roof, if you're working, you pay rent. If you're at
Right.
school, you don't pay rent. And you
Right.
can stay here as long as you need to, because I'm not going to kick you out. I'm not going to tell you go freaking figure it out until you're 24 or something, and I'm going to be like,
Right.
all right, you need to go figure it out. But if you're paying rent and you're acting right, and not causing problems, I don't care.
Yeah.
You can live with me as long as you want. I don't,
Yeah.
because I didn't have that.
Right.
I mean, I was out of the house at 15,
Yeah.
and so all of that time, and then I went back and forth a little bit, but it's that figure it out factor.
Yeah.
But if you could have somebody that loves you and cares about you, that's a safety net to be able to help you bounce back up from those decisions. And I mean, I want to give them that support. Even my kids that don't live with me know that they can call me at any time. And if I don't have the money, I'm going to have you emotionally,
Right.
like
That's right.
whatever we can do. But it's scary out there.
Yeah.
And most 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds don't know what the hell they want to do with their life. So
That's
why
right.
not give them a year or two to kind of figure it out? Start being an adult first. Test it out while you still are under the roof of your parents' home.
Right.
So if you fuck up, it's not detrimental.
Right.
I
Right.
don't want my kids to be homeless if they mess up or something like that, to where, it's detrimental. And then guess what that does, guys? Fucks with your psyche. And then
Yeah.
I'm not good enough. And then this, and I'm never going to be anything. And then, oh, well, I'm just going to go hang out with friends or whatever. And they start beating themselves up just like we do as parents. Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing that trip to Europe. I'm not. No,
Yep.
no, 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 no. Let's talk about it. It's all
Right.
about talking about it and being transparent with each other.
Well, and I think, that's such a great perspective to offer people in terms of if your kid is not ready to go to college or do
Right.
one of those things right after.
And they're voicing
And,
that.
for us, it's been all about kind of what I refer to as the launch plan, right? And outside of this podcast and outside of my day job, I'm building a business around parenting coaching, as you guys have heard me say before. And the online course that I'm beginning to design is all about the launch plan, right? What are the conditions you create to help your kid launch? And you've
Right.
actually identified a couple of them. But I think that for us, one of the keys is, to your point, 5 years, right? So we're not saying you have to go to college. And these days, I would like to think folks, given again the cost of college, and given what we know about the way that the world of work is changing
It's so
drastically right
crazy.
now,
Yeah.
that it's okay, right, for our kids to not go right into college. But the focus really is whether you go to college, whether you get a job, whether you go into the military, 5 years, right? You have 5 years from the time you graduate high school to figure it out. Now, that doesn't mean, to your point, Jane, that you're going to be homeless in 5 years no matter what. But what it does do is light a fire under them so that they realize, I have a 5-year plan I've got to scope out. I can't just get a job and wake up every day and live a day. I really have to be forward thinking. So again, we'll go into that in more depth later, but for the purposes of this conversation, the other piece that I think is so important about that is, if our kids aren't ready to go to college, then throwing our money away by sending them anyway, right, is not a good choice. And I had plenty of parents as a high school principal who, and I remember one, oh my gosh, couple distinctly, and their kid was just, he was just making a series of bad choices, right?
He was messing it up. Yeah.
But he was a kid from a family who, our kids go to college and they expect, and he wanted to go to college. And I remember them sitting in my office saying, after the next thing he had done, and this was like February or March, right? So the college acceptance were starting to come back and they had to decide. And they were like, we don't know. Do we send him to a 4-year? Maybe him going away to school will be what it takes. And I just said, if you're asking me what I would do, I'm telling you, I would not spend $20,000 next year on my kid until he actually demonstrates a readiness to make that an investment and not money I'm going to throw away.
This is an investment.
Right now, he's going to be, at the semester, he's likely going to be the kid on the academic warning list, if not worse. And you don't get your money back for that crap. Right.
You do not.
So anyway, and I'm going to throw this in as a complete tangent, again, just in that big picture of college, but it ties to, Jane, what you were talking about in terms of the money, people spend on the graduation parties and the trips and all the things, right? Really thinking about the return on investment. And one of the best pieces of advice that Joe and I got several years ago, as we had, because we had 2 kids in college at one time, right after one of our other kids had just finished college. And he said, and we were talking about like the balance of student loans and, what we could afford to support, et cetera. And he just said, whatever you do, don't get any loans in your own name. Any loans that your kids get for college should be in their name. You are 20 years, 25 years away from retirement. They have a lifetime to pay them off. And that doesn't mean that later, if you're in a position to help pay them off, you can't pay them off. But it does mean, for God's sakes, they shouldn't be in your name, right? And not at this point in your life. And I had never thought of it that way. And I was like, dude, that's genius. You're right. Because I think there are a lot of parents who do that. They get the college loans for their kids because they want to pay for it, when in reality, doesn't, getting it in your kid's name doesn't mean that they're the ones who are going to pay for it. You could still pay for it, but it ensures that you're not screwed later.
Well, here's the big part of it. It's all about ownership.
Yes.
So here's why that person told you this. If they don't have any skin in the game,
oh, amen,
the buy-in is not there, my friend. So if the loan is in your name, what the heck do they care? I mean, and I'm not saying that every adult or child is like this, but it's buried back there because they know if they screw up, well, mom, it's in their name. So I can go get another student loan, or I can go do this. But what does that cause? It causes frustration. It causes, now the parents don't trust, or I can't rely on you. And then when everybody comes together for Christmas and everybody's fighting, this is why, because we're away from each other for 6 months and we're building up all of this tension. And then we come together and everything's supposed to be honky dory. And this is when we have to, weed out the garden, because we need to, talk about all of the crap that you've pissed me off about over the last 6 months. And why not take away all of that and go, hey, at the beginning, this is you. This is your choice. This is your financial, obligation. And this is your future. Own it. Own it. Yeah. And if you own it, you're more likely to succeed in it than somebody placing it on your lap saying, this is what you need to do. Because anybody.
And I am a perfect example.
Okay, perfect. Tell a story.
I can honestly share it, because so I still don't know how, because we had nothing when I was growing up. But my parents paid for my first semester of college. I went to a 4-year university away from home because, as you all heard in my first trash episode, that was my way out, right, of a really horrific situation. And my parents tried to coerce me one last time to stay by basically saying, if you go away to college, we're not paying for it. And then they ended up, when I called their bluff, they ended up paying for 1 semester. And that first semester, I was the typical freshman, right?
Right.
When I realized like nobody was taking attendance, nobody cared if I went to class. Oh yeah, I would roll over in the morning and be like, yeah, I'll go on Wednesday. It's fine.
Yes.
Oh, whatever. I know. I was a
Oh my
bad girl.
gosh,
You
such a
guys all thought
rebel.
I was a you all thought I was a teacher's pet my whole life. But anyway, so we won't go down too far that path. But to suffice it to say that I wasn't on the academic warning list, but I was teetering on it by the end of first semester. That, by the way, though, was the cutoff. And I also knew first semester that if I didn't figure out a way to pay for it myself and find a place to live and do all the things, second semester, I'd be back home in
At the house.
Spotsylvania. And so
That wasn't
I
happening.
did all those things and I made it all happen and I got the student loans and I did it. And to your point, yes, the moment it was mine is the moment I completely changed who I was. I had urgency. I wanted to take as many classes as I could for that amount of money, right? Like
Yep.
usually you can take anywhere from 9 to 15 credits for the $10,000 you just gave us. Well, if I wasn't paying for it, I'm taking 9. But when I was
Right.
paying for it, oh yeah,
You're
I'm
taking
taking
15.
15, right? So
Yeah.
all the things, right? So yeah, your point is so well taken that the skin in the game, even if you can afford to pay for the whole thing,
Right.
it's just not a bad idea.
Don't take
Just
ownership.
not a
You've
bad
taken ownership of raising your child up until
idea.
this point. It's now time for them to take ownership of their future. And
Yep.
if you don't have a way to hold them accountable, or the world, the universe doesn't have a way to hold them accountable, most people, if that accountability is gone, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, they're going to take the lighter road, like the path of least
That's right.
resistance. And because it's
All
easy,
of us, right?
all of us,
Exactly.
even me, I'm
Exactly.
like, oh, I got a loophole. Let me jump
Well,
through that.
let me find it and use it. So, and I'll make a quick final point on this front, and then we can move to the last piece here, which is like how we start to fill the space when our kids do,
Yes.
right? Take
Yes.
take the step and leave the nest and do all the things, right? So my last thought on that is that we've been in a position, fortunately, right, with our kids to cover a lot of it under certain conditions, right? If you're in state, we'll do this. If you decide to go out of state, you have to do this. Like we have certain conditions. However, we've also the ownership piece that you're talking about has come through in this way. We expect you after the first semester when you're acclimating, we expect you to have X grade or better. And if
Yeah.
you have a lower grade than that class, then you pay us back, right? Like
There
that's
you
how this
go.
works.
Accountability.
So there's lots of ways to have them own it to your point. And so that was another whole piece. And again, that's a whole other conversation. But let's talk a little bit about like the other piece that really I was really kind of emerged or submerged in yesterday with a girlfriend of mine whose oldest son has, he's kind of take part-time in college, part-time at home, but now he's moved out. So he's now living outside of the home. And now the youngest son went to college this fall and she's really struggling with, and now we're into the spring semester, right? And so she's really struggling with she always worked part-time at different times when they were growing up, but she is a great example of a mom who literally put her kids at the center and made everything revolve around them. Everything about her own identity is tied up in them. And what we know now, I think from our own experiences, is that can't happen. Like I shouldn't say it can't happen. That is not the healthiest thing to have happen because in some way, shape, or form, you losing your identity is a detriment to everybody.
Right.
But she's now facing that. And I think a lot of parents and especially moms are sitting right there right now, right? Their kid is going to leave in the fall. This is our last summer, right? They're having all the feelings. So, how we've both navigated that. We've both had kids who've, left the nest, etc. And you're obviously on the cusp in terms of not, whether Jenny goes somewhere or not, that she will be living a more independent life right
Right.
now because it's not high school. It's not that same scenario. So what are you thinking? What are your thoughts about how people help navigate that?
It's an interesting one because both you and I have both been career driven, and we've always, as far as I know, we've always worked. I mean, I
Yep.
am a poor example of a mother that stays at home with their children because even with my last two children, I mean, I was back at work after 2 weeks with Chase
Yep.
after having her, and Jenny, I was back after 24 hours.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't have a choice
Yeah.
financially. I had to keep working, and I didn't have a maternity leave where I worked and stuff like that. So, the babies came to work with me and I just kept trudging along. But I will say this, that, that companionship with your kids and, that leadership role that you take with them is now being altered to, you're no longer managing children, you're managing young adults, but from afar or without 100% control, right? Yep. And so that's different. It's definitely different. But again, like I'm going to go back to, I've learned a lot being a parent and a coach, more so being a coach on how to have conversations with your kids and how to really build solid relationships with them. And I'm not perfect. There's some things that my kids hate that I do or say or whatever. I get that. But I've really, really thought about this because I also, even though I've never really stayed home with them, but I've always worked, I'm like, what am I going to do with myself when they're out of here? And right now I'm kind of getting a taste of that because my 17-year-old is very independent. She turns 18 in October, but she's graduating in a couple of weeks. And my youngest is 12. She's going into 8th grade, and then she's going to be in high school. So it's only 5 years away where I'm going to be like, okay, that's it. And it's just me. And me, I've been a mom since I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
I have been a mom for a long ass time and at a very young age. And that was and is my identity. So whether I work or not, that's always been my core. I've been a mom this whole time. And so for me, what I'm really focusing on is I don't know if I'll necessarily have empty nesters, but how am I going to occupy my time when it comes to running the kids around, stuff like that. And I've thought about this a lot because I'm like, I can't just fall into it. I can't wait 5 years and not have a social life and then whatever.
Right.
So here's my coachy wisdom on this, guys. Start now. Don't wait until they're freaking falling out of high school and into college and then they're going to be gone. Start now. High school is the best time, junior high school even is the best time to start figuring out who the adult you is. Yes. Because you went from being a teenager, maybe going to college, and then becoming a mom and being at home most of the time or working part-time, or they have dominated your time and you've given that time and your identity to your children. Take it back. It's time to start reclaiming that identity and figuring out what you and your partner still like to do together. That's right. Without children. What hobbies do you like? We all change. Personalities change. You're not the same person that you were when you started having those babies. And you're not going to be the same person when they're out. So who are you? What are you doing? How are you taking care of yourself? How are you occupying your time? What projects are you working on? Are you getting a part-time job? How do you fulfill your joy? If that's the only thing that brought you joy, so how are you going to use your time moving forward? Are you going to go donate your time with other kids? Are you going to go get a job? Whatever it is. So my big thing is start now. Don't wait until the time is over. Yeah. Build those goals. Imagine who you want to be. I had a coaching client, an in-person coaching client yesterday, and we made dream boards. Love that. Or vision boards, because he had made one, but it was like the end goal. Like that's the ultimate goal. And I'm like, bro, what's going on now?
Yeah, you have a lot of time between here.
Yeah, it was like the end goal. Like he had this, a picture of a beautiful wife and on a ranch. And I'm like, okay, you have a lot of work to do before you get there. I'm just saying we have a lot of work to do. So how about we look at what's the next year look like? And oh my God, did that vision board look totally different?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he was like, oh, I like this. I'm like, yeah. I go, I'll make one too. Oh my God. I'm going to show you. I'm sorry, guys. You can't see my dream board. Maybe I'll make it the image.
Oh yeah. The image for the episode. I love it. Jane's walking away to get her vision board, but don't worry. She'll be right back.
Huh?
I was narrating while you were gone.
Oh, sorry. How fun is this? It even has sex.
Oh my gosh.
Look at the Barbie legs. Woo.
Hey.
But
I love it.
Eating healthier, saving money, having a strong mind, having a good day, doing your best, dating again, having fun, being healthy, being big in the game. Like it's not a ton of stuff, but it's like just the stuff that I want to do in the next year. I want to,
and it's so clear. Like you didn't even have to walk through it just now. Just looking at it, I could kind of map the trajectory of what you intend to do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And it's like, And I love this, and I put it in the center. Time you enjoy wasting is not wasted time.
Oh,
Y'all.
I love that. Okay, so you know what I love about our conversations is we don't plot them out point by
We
point.
don't.
We have big bucket areas. But so you introducing that to us, Jane, I think it's one thing for you to say, start now, start thinking now about who you want to
Yeah.
be, how you want to be, etc. And I can't agree more, right? I think that's exactly right. That now is the time to start thinking about who you are outside of your children, to start thinking about what you like, what you're interested in, what are
Yep.
the things that you think about doing and then you think, oh, I don't have time because dot, dot, dot. Like
Yes,
those are
you
the things
do.
we're talking about.
Mhm.
But I love the idea of the simple act of creating a dream or vision board for yourself. And maybe you do project out 4 years from now when your kid is leaving, or 2 years from now, or
Right.
maybe you do a baby step vision board like Jane just talked about. And it's 1 year from now, how will I be more uh, me centered, right?
Right.
How will I be taking steps to be more me centered? And all of it to the goal of not feeling lost and alone and useless when
Right.
your kids move on, because your kids are
Right.
moving on. If you've done a good job, your kids are moving on, right?
Right.
That's the ultimate sign of success, that you've worked hard as a parent and actually accomplished what you set out to. And so
Yeah.
with that, who are you going to be, right, when they move on? And it
Right.
can't be, I'm going to wait until they have grandchildren and then I'm going to be the grandmother, right? There's going to be some
No.
space in between there. You're going to want to really find yourself. So I love the idea of the
Yeah.
strategy, if you will, of using a vision board to really start to think about who that might be. And guess what? Just like your kid who's graduating right now, you might not know, and that's okay.
Right.
But like them, you actually have to be intentional about seeking it out, right?
And
In
this
order
is
to better understand.
and this is your graduation too, damn it. You did
Amen.
it. You did it.
Amen.
You raised a functioning teenager. You got to this point, they graduated. There's a lot of kids out there that don't graduate and have major issues and have troubled outcomes and all of those things. You freaking did it.
That's right.
Pat yourself on the back. You supported your child and raised them through this. Support them further, but don't take it on as a personal thing that that's your only identity, because it's not. It's now
Yes.
their identity, and now you can reclaim yours and make it new again.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and I'm doing a lot of things, like reading, and it's not one of my favorite things, but I'm trying to do some different things and stuff like that. So it's just it's all about finding you, and not letting those kids be your identity, because
Right.
it's just a part. That's a chapter in your world.
I love wrapping this up on that note, this idea of congratulating yourself,
Yes.
because like you said, Jane, you did it, right? And if your kid is happy, and your kid, even if they're confused, they can be
Yep.
confused and be happy. If they are generally happy, if they're excited, if they're scared, but you have gotten to them to this point where they've met this particular milestone, then congratulations,
Yeah.
right? You made it through, and it doesn't matter what they're going to do tomorrow or next fall, right? Enjoy this moment. And it
Moment.
doesn't matter if enjoying it looks like going out to dinner with just your family, or making dinner at home, or a big fancy party. Doesn't matter what that looks like. Enjoy it, revel in it. And know, like you just said, Jane, it's one milestone of a much bigger life picture. But we hope that this conversation has helped you kind of take a deep breath, release some of the tension and the anxiety around, but it's not good enough, but what they're doing over there, and look at, and remember that you're enough.
Yep.
You're always enough. Your kid's going to be just fine no matter how this graduation goes down. And give yourself a chance to relax and celebrate just a little bit of what you've just done.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Because that's so important. And we step over, you know, um, what our position has been in this the whole time.
that's right.
You
That's
know,
exactly right.
the crying through homework, the packed lunches, the pickup because they got in a fight or they're sick. I ran into a basketball pole and busted my forehead open. There's blood everywhere. Like all the fun stories that you have, the plays, the art pieces that you're like, what is that? But in your brain, you're like, in your brain, you're like, what is that? But outward, you're like, oh my God, it's beautiful.
It's the most
All of the,
amazing.
yeah, the bullying, meetings, the open houses, the sports, all of that stuff. You guys did it.
Yep.
We did it.
A
Yay.
freaking man. All right, we're
Yes.
gonna wrap it right there and just say go enjoy whatever that looks like for you.
Yes.
And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. I think it's gonna be our Father's Day
Ooh,
episode.
Father's Day is coming.
Hey, hey. All right, you guys. Thanks for being here, man.
All right. Bye.